Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are excited to have you guys here. My name is Julie Dobbins, and I work for the Table Group. And we love our partnership with Leadr. And so we're excited to get to be with them today and talk a little bit about Working Genius. But as we kind of wait for everybody to log on, if you want to just pull up your chat, make sure it's toggled to chat everybody. And then if you want to, as we get started, you can put in the Olympic event that you are most excited to watch if you're not boycotting the Olympics. I am currently missing US women's rugby to be on this webinar. So that's the one I'm pumped for, but we'd love to hear from you guys as we wait for everybody to log in.
I think what you meant to say, Julie, is that you would rather miss the rugby to be on the webinar versus miss the webinar rugby. I think
It's true. It was a priority statement. That's definitely what it was. I am happy to be here. I'll check.
This
I'll check
is, in fact,
after.
an Olympic event. I'm going to be competing against Matt in this presentation. So
What?
Perfect.
What are we competing in? Pick a sport that you'll win in.
Talking is the sport that Cody will.
Ignoring Julie's advice, pre-webinar advice about being succinct, very clear, all of that stuff. I'd probably get the gold medal, right, Jules?
You would. That or in losing your sunglasses.
That's true. I have many gold medals about losing sunglasses.
I don't buy sunglasses anymore because I have the platinum medal for losing sunglasses.
It's a real thing. Well, hopefully we've got people logging in. Again, if you want to chat in questions, we'd love to have you put questions in the chat as we get started. So just make sure that you're chatting, everybody. But like I said, my name's Julie, and I have worked at the Table Group for the last couple of years. And Working Genius has just been a huge part of our business, but also even for our team to really thrive and be successful. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is just the Working Genius model, and particularly how we have built Leadr Advantage to really help teams apply the model and help, change their meetings and their better understanding of one another. And, we have used it a ton. And so I'm going to let Matt and Cody kind of introduce themselves. So if you can just share a little bit about yourself, and then obviously the different companies that we represent here, that would be great as we get kicked off. Matt, you go.
I'll go first because I would win a gold medal if I fought Cody in anything. Well, I'm Matt. Great to meet you, everybody. I've got a strange accent. I'm originally from New Zealand, moved to Seattle about 10 years ago, moved to Dallas about 5 years ago. I've got a beautiful baby daughter named Ada, and my wife, Kaisa, and I make our home in McKinney, Texas, North Dallas. And I have the pleasure of being the CEO and founder of a software company called Leadr. And with this partnership with the Table Group, we have the opportunity to bring organizational health to the world. And so super excited to talk today about Working Genius and all the things that I've learned over the last year, as it has taught me how to be a better work person. So yeah, very excited to dive in.
Awesome. Thank you. Cody.
Cody Thompson. So I've been at the Table Group for 10 years. Get to help Pat lead some initiatives around helping transform the world of work. That's what we want to do. We want there to be more healthy companies out there than unhealthy companies. So every day we wake up knowing that there are a handful of people out there who have jobs that are miserable, and we are waging a war against job misery. And that's part of our partnership with Leadr. So I'm in Utah now. This is where I was born and raised. I spent some time in California with Pat in the office. And then out here, we just moved our family. We've got a 6-year-old, about to be 6, 4, and 2. So 6-year-old girl, 4-year-old boy, 2-year-old girl. So we're in the middle of that, which is an Olympic sport in and of itself. Probably
Yes.
getting a bronze right now, not necessarily a gold medal in that category. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Working Genius. I think I'll just say this up front, like Working Genius might be the thing that helped me unlock my own potential as a leader in ways that I didn't previously understand. Like I've been with Pat and the Table Group for many years, but Working Genius helped all these puzzle pieces sort of fall into place, helped me figure out how I complement our team here. And so I'm excited to share a lot of that with you guys in hopes that it can do the same for you all.
Awesome. Great. Well, Cody, do you want to kind of kick us off? Just tell us a brief overview of how did Working Genius even start? And I know you kind of mentioned that here, but just kind of give us some of the origins. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll say this to start is we were not sitting around thinking that the world needed another assessment, because it doesn't. We are big users of the Myers-Briggs and DISC and leverage some of those things in the work that we did with clients. So we did not, we were not sitting in a mountain cabin thinking, what is the next, assessment that people could use for work? It really was born out of a frustration that Pat had at the table group, which is he sort of thought of it this way, I hired all the people that fit our culture and that I care about. I work in an industry that I love. I spent 25 years building my own business. Why is it that on a day in and day out experience at work that some days I'm really excited during some tasks at work, and some days I get really frustrated and grumpy? And the way Pat often does, he just goes to a whiteboard and tried to figure it out. So he spent 4 hours at a whiteboard because Amy, one of our co-founders, asked, why are you like this? Why is it that sometimes you're really excited and happy? And why is it that sometimes you're frustrated? And out of genuine curiosity, went to a whiteboard and tried to distill work down and thought, like, there's parts of work that I really enjoy and there are parts that are not. And so the result of that on the whiteboard was the first iterations of Working Genius. So, and it really, and we'll get into this more, but it really spoke more to work itself than some of these other assessments. It wasn't about, yes, it is a personality in the assessment in the sense that we get to find out the type of work that we most are fulfilled by. But it really, we talk about it as 20% personality instrument and 80% productivity tool. What this did to radically transform our team's level of productivity and output was incredible. So it's not about like just the way we're wired. In fact, I think the way we're thinking about it as it relates to some of those other major assessments out there, Myers-Briggs, DISC, working styles, those things, this is truly about how applied it is to work and teams. And that's what we're excited to explore with you guys today.
Awesome. So do you want to kind of go through just the 6 types of geniuses before we dive into more of applying it to teams and everything like that?
Sure. And I'll just say the first time I saw it on a whiteboard, as Pat was teasing it out, there were only 3 circles. So it was like kind of fun to see the evolution of it. And he had 3 circles that were sort of divided in half. And now as you see Working Genius in the website and on the report, is we made them gears. And that was intentional. There's 6 gears. The idea is that all 6 of these activities are required for any type of work. So it's like whether you're planning a family vacation, whether you're launching a new product, or even starting a company, quite frankly, it involves all 6 of these tasks. And the reason the gears are represented that way is like, if you miss any one of these, you can start to predict where you'll get stuck or lost or even bored. And so the concept of Working Genius is simply all 6 of these are required. And so here's the sentiment. I think one of the discoveries is just how Pat distilled work into 6 categories. So we'll go through them. And as we go through them, the way to think about this is 2 of them would represent your working genius, meaning as I describe all 6 of these activities, 2 of them should be things that you're really interested in, you get joy and energy from, you are, if you did that work all day long, it'd be very fulfilling, right? 2, so we call that your working genius. On the other side of the spectrum, 2 of them we would call your working frustration. And there are going to be 2 of these activities that you feel particularly drained by, or that would cause you frustration personally, or even frustrate your team if you're required to do a lot of that work. And then the middle 2 are what we call your working competency. So that means I can do it. It's not that fulfilling. It's not as bad as a frustration. But I just lay that out there. So as we go through this, if you haven't taken the assessment, you can start to identify which of these activities might fall into one of those categories for you. So let's start with this.
Do you want me to pull up the slides just so you can have the visual?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Appreciate that, Julie.
Share screen really quickly. Hopefully I can get to the right. All right, here we go.
Perfect.
Right.
So we'll start at the beginning, which is the very first activity in any endeavor needs to be wonder. We call it wonder. And there's another guy out there, Jamie Winship, who I've loved. He talks about like contemplation is the first step in any of this stuff. So wonder is sort of that. The people with the gift of wonder really love pondering the bigger picture. They're often responding to the environment. Maybe it's their customer base, maybe it's the market environment, and they're thinking, is there an opportunity? Is there some way that we can tap into, is there potential, untapped potential there, both in, in terms of the environment, but it might even be in people. Wonders like to ponder their, you could even say, and this is not negative, pejorative way of saying this, like they have their head in the clouds in a really great way. All good endeavors, all good products start with this concept of wonder, like, is there a better way? Is there a missing piece here? Should we do it a different way? So wonder is a critical part of any endeavor, and it's the first genius. So people get a lot of joy and energy from pondering or contemplating the bigger picture. So every good,
this one,
yeah,
Cody, almost like futuristic, right? It's almost like visionary. I've heard
totally.
it's like the role of a CEO is their future is their present. And so
Totally.
that future thinking, head in the clouds person, like that's a wonder person. I'm sure as Cody's sharing, you're like, oh, I know who that is. That's Bill on my team, or that's Joe on my team. Like that wonder person is a special person.
Totally. And the other thing another hallmark is they often ask really great questions. Like when I said how Working Genius got started, Amy asked Pat, why are you the way that you are? Like that is a very contemplative question. And that sparked Pat to move into the next phase of work, which is what we call invention. So we have to ask really great questions about what's possible and what's untapped from a potential standpoint. And then we move into the next genius, which is invention. And so people with the genius of invention love creating from a blank slate. They love the idea of like a problem to solve, maybe a question that a wonderer posed with very little parameters and say, I want to figure this out. So they are often, you know, this might even be considered one of the like more common ways that people use the word genius in the world. Like, oh, that person's a genius. They always have new creative ideas. Well, and what we've discovered is you need all 6 of these geniuses, but this one is very evident. They have lots of ideas for new products, new companies. They might keep a whole journal of ideas or opportunities. And so the idea is just inventing new possibilities, new ways to solve that wonder question. So it goes wonder. Let's ask really good questions. Potential, like tap into the potential. Invention, let's come up with a bunch of ideas that might solve that solution. And all these are connected. The next genius that we need is the genius of discernment. So if an inventor comes up with all these ideas, not all ideas are worth implementing. We need a very good way of evaluating and vetting those ideas. And so discerners, people with the gift of discernment, they love evaluating. They have good gut feel and instincts around what will work and not work. And so as an inventor throws things on a whiteboard, for example, new options, new opportunities, the person with discernment really gets joy and fulfillment from refining, tweaking, evaluating, and judging those ideas. And so there is a loop. And you'll notice this when you're on teams that have invention and discernment really well represented, is there's this iterative loop that happens between invention and discernment, where we come up with an idea, a discerner evaluates it and says like, well, let's tweak it. And so there's this idea that like it keeps getting refined and refined and refined until we've decided this is what we should move forward with.
And I'll say one thing, Cody, about
Go ahead.
discerners, because this might relate to someone in the room. I think the discerners are often the most misunderstood because they can be perceived as checked out in a conversation. Because while a meeting might be happening, the discerner's thinking there and pondering like all the possible outcomes. And because they're quiet, everyone else in the room is going, oh, they're checked out, they're not paying attention. But actually their genius is like sitting and pondering and thinking about all the possible outcomes. And then they'll speak out with this sort of eloquent, discerned, fulfilled idea.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I think the discerner is the most misunderstood, but maybe the most powerful person in the room sometimes.
You know, and I not to mash too many personality assessments together, but an introverted discerner might do that internally. An extroverted discerner might sound like a bubble popper in that conversation. They might be like, well, that's not going to work. And hey, that's not a great idea. So it's so important that we know this about each other, because if you're in that room and someone is trying to offer their genius of discernment, and you're an inventor, Matt, which you are, and you don't have the context for the gift they're trying to give you by discerning your ideas, it might come across as a bubble popper or someone who's pessimistic. So they're really trying to use their gift to evaluate and refine those ideas. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Some people do it a little bit more internal and then refine that. Some people have a little more external voice when it comes to discernment. So yeah, or David says we're shooting it down. David was on the last webinar, basically co-presenting. So I love this chat is just as valuable. Maybe I'll just let him type in all the stuff here. So you have wonder, we ask great questions. Invention, we come up with lots of ideas. Discernment, the way I like to say that is ensuring that we do fewer better things. Not all ideas are worth implementing. And in fact, you'll notice on teams that skip discernment, like, boy, we came up with all these ideas, we tried them all, and we found out later that they failed. Well, discernment is a great way of ensuring that we've evaluated and refined these ideas so that we have better success rate in the future. So fewer better ideas. So once an idea is discerned, it's not good enough. This is all part of and we'll go through this 3 stages. Like, this is more in the ideation phase of work. Well, even if you come up with the best ideas, you may not get the momentum you need around them, which is why you need the next genius. And this is the genius of galvanizing. So you need people on your team, and the people who have this genius love rallying the troops around the most important thing, or the discerned idea. They like pushing people out of their comfort zone, sort of like circling the wagons, making sure that we are all aligned and have the right amount of momentum and energy and movement around the discerned idea. So there are some people who love being in front of the room or at an all hands meeting that are like, hey, here's where we're headed. Let's rally the troops. Let's get momentum and energy in that direction. Those are the people with the gift of galvanizing. And where somebody doesn't have that, oftentimes where people might mistake this with, oh, well, a leader needs to be the galvanizer. They need to be in front of the room. That's not always the case. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in the session, but we've seen leaders with every combination of working genius. And the most important thing is that we're self-aware about what our strengths are, and that we bring people alongside us to help compensate for us. Because the whole point of this is, life and work is a team sport. We need each other to do this. So we each only have 2 of these. So we have people who love galvanizing, who love rallying the troops, getting momentum and energy. Matt, you're a galvanizer. Any thoughts on that?
It's hard to shut us up. Like we love talking, we love sharing our ideas, we love rallying the troops, like, let's charge up the hill, let's go. Like, folks like that just get so much energy about like raising the temperature of a room. The analogy of you're either a thermostat or a thermometer. Galvanizers are a thermostat turning the temperature up in the room. Yeah. And galvanizers can be really frustrating to be around, because it's like, dude, I get it. Like, thank you. We understand you're excited. Let's move on. I like myself being a galvanizer, and I like galvanizing myself to be more of a galvanizer.
Well, and as someone who doesn't have that as a genius, but works with a lot of them, the thing that is so important is like galvanizers keep everybody looking and moving in the same direction. And that's what's really important for teams. If we don't take time to continue to like reorient around, the objective or what's most important, everybody can kind of go off and do their own thing or forget the purpose or interpret it their own way. And that's where, if you don't continue to rally and remind, that's a huge part of galvanizing, you'll feel the effects of that later for sure.
1,000%.
Yeah. I'll say one quick thing before we move on to the next genius, which is, as a galvanizer myself, sometimes I'll use Working Genius as my communication platform. So I might even say to our team, hey, remember, we had this question in our mind. I'll go back to wonder and say, we wondered, like, what's the best way to get Working Genius out in the world, or something like that. We came up with all these ideas, and we discerned that this was the right thing to do. So I'm actually bringing them along this decision-making, this like work journey, to say, and now we're here, here's the plan, let's get moving on the plan. So that,
right. It's almost like the beginning and the end of a story.
Totally. So the great part is you've got people, so just to recap, wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing. Well, we need the next genius, because these are the people who love responding to the call of the galvanizer, and they have the genius of enablement. And enablement can, in many circles and contexts, can have a bad brand, a bad name, a bad bucket of meaning to that word. But really, when you're talking about a person on a team with this gift, these are the team players who help get things off the ground. They are the ones who rally to support the call of the galvanizer and say, I'm here to help. Oftentimes, like we're almost at 1 million people who've taken this assessment, and regularly people with the gift of enablement don't see it as a genius. They think, oh, I'm just nice, or oh, I just volunteer for things. They are integral team members, and oftentimes the glue on the team to say, I'm here to support. Let me know what I can do. They're very people oriented. So they like to sort of anticipate the needs of the other people on their team and proactively go and tackle that. It's the first step in implementation. Matt, you're going to talk about that a little bit later, but this is where we get projects off the ground. If we didn't have these people and we just stopped at galvanizing, there'd be a lot of energy around projects with not a lot of movement. And these people are the first people to raise their hand and say, I'm in, let's go.
Teams without an enablement genius often go week to week thinking that they were aligned and had a great plan and were super excited. And then they meet the following week and they're talking about, well, hey, how come nothing happened? And it's like, because there was a lack of enablement in the room, actually plotting out the plan of being like, and this needs to happen. And we need to talk to this person. We have to engage that conversation. And they bring everybody along and take that one step further down that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that's sort of the first stages of that implementation momentum. And they're wonderful. And they also need people with the next genius, though any team needs this. And that's the genius of tenacity.
I got all excited to do the tenacity one and I did it too quickly. My bad. There we go.
So tenacity, people with the gift of tenacity are people who love checking things off lists. They love, like, I have zero tenacity. It's enough for me to see the finish line. I'm like, okay, that's good. We're there. People with the gift of tenacity are like, there's no way I'm letting you move on to the next thing until we push this thing all the way across the finish line. They get joy and energy. Like, they love waking up with a list of tasks to do and get real fulfillment from checking those things off on a day-to-day basis. So they typically they get a lot of energy from making sure that the thing that we wondered about in the very beginning and the possibility that we actually see those results in the world. And so they love they get joy and energy from seeing the impact of things finished and pushed over the finish line. So if you're on this call, and I think somebody, tenacity a little too hard here, Julie,
I literally cannot find my mouse to be able to stop sharing screens. So I've been trying to do that for about 5 minutes because I'm already anticipating with my tenacity the next thing that we need to do. And I'm like really trying over here. So I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Slides. Not my working genius, clearly running slides for a webinar. Okay, keep going.
And so we'll say this, all 6 of these are required for anything to get done. Like and we'll talk about a team map later, is if you don't have people with tenacity on your team, it's very likely you're getting things to the 5-yard line and getting burned out or lost or bored and then wanting to spin up new things. And these are the people that hold our feet to the fire. They have high standards and they make sure that things get done before we move on to the next thing. Super invaluable, a critical piece of the entire working genius model. And as someone with tenacity frustration, I have high degrees of appreciation for people who bring this to the table.
I literally have someone on my team, Cody, Holly, who has a block on her calendar called tea time, and it's not sitting there drinking a cup of tea like you're doing right now. It's that was perfectly timed, by the way.
How about that?
You're on another level. Oh my God. Holly literally has tea time on her calendar because it creates its energy for her, like to go through and knock out a task list, which for me, that would feel quite draining.
Mm-hmm. So Julie, that's kind of the high level overview. I think it'd be fun. We'll talk about the way it impacts teams, but as you look at this as an individual, right? Before we move on to the team application, is knowing what your working genius is. So 2 of these are your working genius. Mine are discernment and galvanizing. And so I worked with Pat for probably 8 years before I realized what our working geniuses are. We were the same Myers-Briggs type. We were both ENFPs. And what would happen is Pat would be gone and our team would hand me a whiteboard marker and say, hey, go do your best Pat impression on the whiteboard. And I could kind of do it, but and obviously Pat's he's on a different level than me. That wasn't the point. But I would honestly leave some of those sessions thinking like, gosh, do I watch too much TV or listen to too many podcasts? Like, why can't I create the way that Pat creates? And what we realized was Pat had invention and I don't have invention as a genius. And what it did, one of the primary things that Working Genius does for individuals is it allows us to avoid unnecessary guilt and judgment of others. So guilt for ourselves, like, oh, I've never had tenacity. before I knew that was how I was wired, when I was in school, I just felt like a bad student because it was so hard for me to get papers in on time and make sure I finished the homework thoroughly. Now, knowing this, I just know what my strengths are and I can lean into those and then tap into my teammates around me to compensate for my weaknesses. So just knowing this alone is like avoiding unnecessary guilt for myself and then judgment of others. Like, hey, we get to understand how people are wired, and that alone can boost productivity and teamwork in a way that almost nothing else that we've come across has.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. My example, so I'm an IG, so I'm an inventor galvanizer, which means I love galvanizing people around my bad ideas. So, and if you don't like my idea, it means that I haven't galvanized you well enough. That's that I find myself. Don't laugh, Julie. That's never happened.
Great strategy. What are you talking about?
And then my frustrations are wonder and enablement. And so I get really frustrated in my executive, which is funny coming from a CEO, but I'm frustrated in our executive team meetings when my team members are like, what will the next 3 to 5 years look like? And I'm like, are you kidding? Focus on the thing that's important right now. Why are we talking about the next 3 to 5 years? And so I have to lean into my wonder. And then when anyone says, hey, we should come up with a plan, I'm always like, no, don't worry about enablement. It'll happen. Let's just go and do it. And so understanding and having the words, I think that's the key part, Cody, is like me knowing myself and having the words to say, I'm not bad at this. It's just I have to lean into it. It creates so much more energy for me to do that. And it also, like you said, helping with my teammates, they know that about me and they can tell when I'm checking out because it's my frustration.
And that's why this is the reason that we talked about productivity as one of the anchors of this webinar and this tool is because when you have that level of understanding of your team and you can tap into one another's gifts, and we've got some stories we'll share later, but even what this did for the table group, and we've worked on our teamwork and building trust and conflict, all the things around the 5 dysfunctions. We've worked on hiring ideal team players. This unlocked a level of productivity that we had never been able to accomplish before because we just made sure that everybody was in a seat that matched their working genius in a way that just maximized our ability to get through projects well. So that plays out in meetings, it plays out in one-on-one conversations, it plays out even in our hiring and assessing the talent that we need on the team. So this has been an absolute transformational piece of our journey. And then I'll just say this, of everything that Pat's done at the table group, ideal team player, the advantage, the 5 dysfunctions, this has been far and away the fastest growing, most impactful thing that we've done in the past 27 and a half years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm going to try just stopping the slideshow to see if that will let me stop sharing screen. So sorry that this is going to be a little clunky, but I'm going to get us back to being able to see one another. Because Matt, I would love for you to just share your introduction to Working Genius and then how you've seen the value in it for your team, kind of that team dynamic.
Yeah, 1000%. So if you know anything about me, I really don't like being put in a box. And so anytime that there was personality assessments that we'd taken as a team, it drove me nuts. And so if you told me a year ago that I would be on a webinar talking about an assessment, I literally would have laughed you out of the room because there's no way that Matt would fall in line and get behind one of these things. So what Cody said is so true. This is more of a productivity assessment than a personality assessment. And there were two light bulb moments for me that really made me click and understand why this would be valuable. The first one was the geniuses and the frustrations is not that you are good or bad at something. It's that you require more or less energy to do it. And so what I've found with other assessments, like the Enneagram is a classic example, is people use those answers as a crutch or an excuse to be bad at something. So if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, one of the numbers is an 8, and an 8 is a challenger. 8 loves having good debates, 8 loves sharing their opinion, and they're often coined as 8-holes. And so my perspective is 8 aren't 8-holes. 8s are challengers. Maybe you're just a jerk and you're using the excuse of you're an 8 to be a jerk when actually you're just a jerk. And so that's the issue that I always have with so many other assessments. It's like, oh, you're an ENTJ, which must mean that you're this. And the reason why Working Genius breaks the mold is the CEO of Southwest Airlines is an ET. Their genius is literally enablement and tenacity. And when you think about what a CEO does on a consistent basis, it's probably much more WI than it is ET. And yet they're so successful in that role because they're able to lean into their frustrations and lean into their geniuses. The other light bulb moment that I had was this idea of meeting stew. So Julie, if you don't mind, can we talk about the elevation?
Want me to share screen again? That's going real well for us.
Now,
I will do it.
check out of these slides. Here we go.
Here we go.
10 out of 10. So meeting stew is this idea that in one meeting or one conversation, you're going from high level strategy to low level tactics. And it just feels like a stew. It feels like a hodgepodge of like, wait, where are we? And what conversation are we having? And it can easily feel like you're getting lost. So high level elevation or high level strategy, a wonder question might be, I wonder if we're going to expand our company to go overseas into a market in Europe. That might be a good wonder question. And then a tenacity conversation might be, on Tuesday, Billy is going to install five fire extinguishers in the new office in Paris because we moved. So what often happens, and this is why meetings, using Working Genius in meetings is so helpful, what often happens is we have meeting stew. In the same conversation, we go from, should we go to Europe, to we've gone to Europe and we're going to put fire extinguishers in the office. That's called meeting stew. And so what we need to do when we talk about Working Genius is understand the elevation. Wonder, as Cody talked about, is actually 30,000 feet. It's very high in the sky, like hit in the clouds, literally. It's a conversation that has to be had way, way, way up in elevation. And then tenacity is 5,000 feet. Like we're landing the plane, we're talking very small details. And so the unlocking moment that you'll have with your team when you start using this language is someone will say something like, hey, is this a WI meeting or is this an ET meeting? And even within a conversation, someone will say, hey, are you discerning this idea or are you galvanizing this idea? And that language allows you to be much more on track and take something all the way from beginning through to end. So those are the two light bulb moments I had. And I literally don't know how we would run our team meetings now without this framework, because we now have the language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just add that when we talk about productivity as one of the hallmarks of Working Genius, meetings might be the place where you will see that more prevalent than anywhere else, in the sense that if you can have better, more effective meetings than your competition, even 30% more, 50% more effective meetings, you will run circles. When you make better decisions, faster decisions than your competition, you can run circles around them. And this is where so much of what we talk about, from the 5 dysfunctions to organizational clarity, happens in the context of meetings. And Working Genius might be the shortest distance between boring and effective meetings and engaged, very streamlined, effective meetings. And the simplest, literally maybe the simplest way for you to implement this is simply to say, like, I will go, when we have a team meeting, we'll go to a whiteboard. I will draw all 6 of these gears like this. And we will, at the very beginning of the meeting, decide what type of meeting are we having here. Bingo. And so a great example would be, we have a certification program around Working Genius, and we're thinking about possibly adding some additional, value add pieces to that business. So the answer, so we are really squarely in, we kind of identified a possible potential thing we should tap into, which is wonder. I will go and circle invention and discernment and say, hey guys, we're not actually getting to galvanizing, enablement, tenacity. We're going to spend a lot of time inventing and discerning right now. What are the possibilities and what should we do and what would actually work for us? And let me say this, that's not an excuse for people with enablement and tenacity to check out of that meeting or even opt out of that meeting, because we need, like, this is not a let's exclude non-inventor discerners. It's more of a way of saying, like, hey, this meeting is probably not going to, it's sort of like a relay race, right? Like the enablement tenacity people should be like, I can't wait till they figure this out, because then they're going to pass the baton to us and we're going to have to run and execute this. And I'm so glad I'm here to hear the invention discernment happen. What this does to maximize the effectiveness of meetings, and you've built this in the Leadr platform, Matt, is like, every time we have a team meeting, I pull up the team map in Leadr, the Leadr Advantage, and I look at it and I say, who's in this meeting and what's this meeting about? And that has done more for our productivity than almost anything we've ever done.
Cody, double click on what you just said, because I want to go deeper on this. You said that the outcome of having more effective meetings could literally outpace your competition. Say that. I think you articulated it better. Say that one more time.
Well, I'll just say this. Part of the privilege of working for Pat and being in a consulting firm is we get like, whereas one person has a job and they go to the same meetings every week, they don't get a chance to see what that looks like in 4, 5, 6 companies a month, or 30 companies a year. One of the things that we see across the board is companies and teams are having bad meetings, and most companies have sort of resigned themselves to believe that, like, well, meetings are just corporate penance. They're supposed to be bad, and they're all this way, and they come with a agenda of things that they want to talk about. The meeting stew that you talk about at the beginning is like, sometimes it's a new HR policy followed by a strategic conversation, followed by a slideshow about some benefits updates. And we leave the meeting and we're like, what the heck actually happened there? And so I would just say this: if you're using Working Genius and you can get it into the DNA of your meetings, like identifying the topics and where they fall in this elevation and getting your team aligned around what you're actually doing in that meeting, you will have meetings that are better than 90% of the people out there. And that will do more for you than you can imagine.
I totally agree.
You guys have both referenced this, but so much of that even is just the personal self-awareness. So Cody gave the example earlier for wondering and venting around possibilities for certification at the table group. And, I'm in those meetings and my tenacity brain, I can't just turn it off. I can't think about what do we need to know to execute on all that, but I can regulate. I can write the questions down and ask them later, or be able to ask Cody, are you galvanizing this? Like, are we going to go do it? You've got a lot of energy. And he's like, nope, I'm still just discerning it. So it helps us even interact with one another in meetings with more clarity, less frustration, so that we can get to the best decision more quickly. So
gotta be front and center, right? Can you go to the next slide real quick for me?
yes, I can.
So this is an example. We call this the care card, which is show me everything related to working with someone that I need to know to be more effective of leading them or working alongside them. So Brett, who's my CFO, his geniuses are my frustrations. So he's really good at high level altitude and low level tactics. And those are my frustrations. Those are the areas that I like to check out in meetings. So the reason why this is so important is if I'm having a one-on-one with Brett or I'm having a team meeting and I can be reminded, because what often happens with these assessments is we take them once, maybe a part of onboarding, and then we put them in the filing cabinet and we them ever again, right? Hypothetically speaking, I'm not calling out anyone on this call, but that does happen to the other company organization down the road. and what's so important about this is when I'm meeting with Brett and I know that I'm frustrated at his geniuses and he knows that he's frustrated with my geniuses, it's in front of us. And so we're able to call each other out. And so literally in our executive team meetings or our one-on-ones, I'll be able to say things like, or he'll say to me, Matt, we're talking about a wonder question and I can tell your eyes have glazed over. Don't check out, engage. And instead of me like maybe feeling personally attacked by that, it's actually given the words to what was actually happening in my brain, because I was disengaged, because it takes so much energy for me to lean into wonder. And so if you don't have this front and center on a regular basis, you'll miss those conversations. And that's what allows you to build trust and be more cohesive.
And I just want to make one note, Matt mentioned this is the care card. So in the Leadr Advantage platform, this is something that is accessible to you as you're doing one-on-ones, as you're in meetings. Like, you can access this so quickly and easily to be able to help orient those conversations or help orient to one another. So Cody mentioned earlier, even just that we're kind of jumping ahead to my next question, which was like, practically, how are people using this, and how have we created Leadr Advantage to really reinforce that? And so meetings was a huge thing that we talked about. So I just want to kind of highlight that part of the platform as well before we go to Q&A, if that's okay. So Matt, do you kind of want to walk through how you guys have designed, and I know this is a little bit small, but being able to see Working Genius and the team map, and then Cody, you can touch on meetings also.
Yeah, it's a little small, but imagine on the left, this is the conversation that we're having, our goals, our agendas, things that we're talking about. And on the right, it's breaking out every single person in the room and by their geniuses and their frustrations. So you can kind of have a clear picture. And so the reason why I wanted to have Cody share more about the importance of getting your meetings right, we've been doing this partnership for about a year now, and we're starting to hear some really incredible stories come out of our shared customers. So one of them, which will highlight why this matters, we recently partnered with a hospital in Texas. And the reason they wanted to work with us is they were really struggling with turnover and sort of disengaged employees in one part of their team. And what they realized was one reason for that is they had really boring and ineffective meetings. And so they were looking to the working genius to give them the language and the wording to help to solve for that. Now, they're still technically in implementation and onboarding, but here's some of the early feedback that we're hearing from them. We are seeing significant improvement in our meeting focus and clarity. We know what to discuss. It's clearer. We're making quicker decisions, and we know who is best suited to lead various parts of the discussion. And this is my favorite part. Because we can literally call out Susie and say, we need your genius right now, it's made every single person in that room feel like their roles have mattered. And so they can't yet quantify exactly what that's going to mean, but they know that people turning up to the meeting, being able to lean into their genius or lean into their frustrations and feeling like their role matters in that room, they know is going to lead to engagement, which is going to lead to a decreased turnover. And so I know when Cody said earlier, there were people when he said, meetings can change the outcome of your organization. I know there are people rolling their eyes like, yeah, right. Truly, 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 if you think of meetings as the battleground where you get your job done and you can help to call out people's geniuses and frustrations, it will change the game for your organization. And I know I'm galvanizing and I know I'm being dramatic, but that's just what I do. Okay.
I love it. Cody, any other thoughts on just using Working Genius and particularly, we use this every week in multiple team meetings that we're in. So how have you seen that practically play out for teams to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to unshare, Julie, if you want to. I would say here's an observation that I have about the way Working Genius, when you have a team map, and even so you described sort of the ways that they can allocate some tasks, right, to different people based on their Working Genius. And I said at the very beginning, and this is not a shtick, like our why do we exist is we want more people to be dignified in their work. And the way that people are dignified in their work is when they work on a team and in an environment where we can tap into our God-given skills to contribute to our team and to the world, right? And so Working Genius does that in ways that is just really dignifying for people, knowing what you bring to the table and then giving language for people to tap into that. So I'll say it this way. We had a client that a woman on their team, perfect cultural fit, was incredible as a high-level account executive on their sales team for many, many years, very successful, got promoted to the head of sales, right? Really great promotion for her, and she loved it. Great cultural fit. And then the market dynamics changed. She was in a global food distribution industry, and the market changed, and the CEO was asking her to come up with a new strategy to address sort of the changes in the market. And for 6 months, she was sort of unable to come up with a new innovative strategy that would sort of ensure their success as the market changed, right? And the CEO was like, boy, I'm just concerned that maybe she's not the right fit for this role. And so we're like, boy, that's so hard for us. We care so much about the cultural fit, all that thing. So we said, let's do Working Genius. And we did Working Genius. And really understandably, everyone on her team had more of the galvanizing enablement and tenacity geniuses, right? Like they were serving clients, they were serving customers, meaning that they were like crossing T's and dotting I's and making sure all of the things were delivered on time. They had enablement. They were making sure those people were cared for. But she had a deficiency in invention. And so this is what I love about Working Genius is it allows us to run towards each other. So rather than say, oh, that person's not right for the role, we said, well, hey, there's a person over here in marketing who has invention. And we said, let's bring that person into a invention discernment conversation about a new strategy. And in 3 hours, we literally put her and her team with the guy with invention he was from marketing, into a room and walked out of that room with a plan that she was in love with, that the CEO loved, that they knew they could execute on. And the sad part was there was almost the CEO was considering getting rid of a great cultural fit, like a champion of their culture because we didn't understand each other's Working Genius. So you just look at that, you look at that team map and you realize like, wow, this gives us a language to tap into one another's geniuses. That made that meeting and that entire endeavor better because we ran towards each other. And that's sort of the difference it can make. It's like, it's not quantifiable on a Gantt chart. You can't really like put it on a graph anywhere, but knowing that woman is thriving in her role because she's tapping into the people around her. And that's why, like I said this earlier, work is a team sport. We need each other. No one has all six geniuses. And we will say this, two things we like to say about this is every job is a 6-letter job, meaning there's no way that you can't just say, well, Matt, you can't say, well, I'm an inventor galvanizer, so all of the other stuff is off my plate. I'm not going to do that stuff. You know, you have to do tenacity. You know, you have to even bring enablement to the table when you're out visiting customers and those things like, but so then the second piece is when people say, well, what's the best type for a team leader? What's the best type is and sort of tongue in cheek, we'll say like, there is a good type, a good 2-letter type for this. The best leader is a self-aware one. And so the best leader is the one who says, that woman at that food distribution company who says, I'm an ET. I need some people with invention around me. Let me tap into them. And so, so this just allows us to run towards each other, to help people be dignified in their work, help lead more effective meetings. I mean, it sounds like I'm a snake oil salesman of this. I've just benefited personally from this in ways that is just hard to calculate. And because our goal is human dignity in the workplace, like I just think so many people would benefit from leveraging Working Genius.
And I'm a beneficiary of it. Like I'm overly galvanizing on this too, Cody, but literally a year ago, I rolled my eyes when they're like, here we go, another assessment. But now the healthy conflict that me and my executive team get to have when someone says, you're checked out, you're disengaged, you're not paying attention. And it's not mean-spirited personal attacks. It's not being rude to someone. It's just saying, we need the part of your genius that you're not bringing right now, or we need you to lean into the frustration.
And Matt, I'll just say this. I used to do that with a PDF of our team map, and like in one-on-ones, I'd have to remind myself the Leadr Advantage platform, the fact that you guys have it front and center for every meeting that we do, for every person, like I can, like in your platform, I can go, oh, we need invention in this conversation. We need tenacity as part of this project team. Let me go find someone. What you've done to scale this in the Leadr Advantage platform has even made us more effective with it, you know? So love that we're reinforcing that with technology. It doesn't abdicate your responsibility for knowing that about the people and inviting them into those conversations, but it does make it so front and center that it just makes it so much easier.
And let me just say this. No, I'm just joking, Julie. I'm like,
oh, I was like, if you guys say another thing and don't let me ask you a question.
I'll let you want to move to Q&A, but I'm like, Cody and I are just going to keep
really we've had so many great questions in the chat, so we're going to try to rapid fire through them. So one of the great questions was just, how do you implement Working Genius like on a large team or in a large organization? So do you start all at once, department by department, leadership level? What are some of the recommendations for that, of really cascading and infusing Working Genius in an organization?
I'll say a very small thing, and then Cody jump in. It has to start at the leadership level. They say the fish rots at the head. So if you're not buying in from the executive team down, the worst message that you could send to your company is, you all need to get better at this, so you need to take the test. That's just not going to work. Start at the executive level so that there's buy-in from the top of the org chart down, and then that word cascading, Julie, is perfect, because the behaviors will cascade. That's what really matters, and they have to see their leader living it out.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think this is not a flavor of the month. So many people are so wary of a new assessment where you find out that you're a blue dolphin or a red buffalo, and then you try to implement it for a little bit of time, and then there's no actual effects that come from that. The leadership team sort of loses sight of it. So I think you're absolutely right. It should start, embraced by the leadership team is what makes it have longevity. The other thing is what we talked about earlier is, and this is sort of a trick, is every company in the world has meetings. This is a daily rhythm, a breath of every company. If you can integrate this into meetings, you have such a better shot of it being adopted and getting it into your DNA than you do saying like, oh, we'll take this during onboarding, or, oh, every quarter we'll review this as your one-on-one. Meetings really is the place that will make this cascade throughout the organization.
Yeah, and that's, again, we've used Leadr Advantage to really reinforce that and infuse it into all of the different meeting structures, whether that's one-on-ones, weekly tacticals, etc. So another question was, we're restructuring our team and looking for how Working Genius can help us make the best choices restructuring. So what are some thoughts on that with using Working Genius to kind of shift or do a restructure?
I wouldn't weaponize it. So I think what the purpose of this is not to say, oh, we need an ID. You're not an ID, so you don't belong on the team. I actually think the key part is what you said, Cody, and I needed to be reminded of that. The key part is the self-awareness and the EQ, right? And so it's not necessarily that you have to make sure you've got every single tiny little genius figured out on every single working group. It's the team's ability to lean into that frustration. Now, that being said, I like the idea of borrowing someone's genius. And so just because someone might not fit within a formal working group, you're totally fine to bring in someone else to say, hey, we need you to fill this gap for this particular conversation or this particular meeting. The only practical advice I'd give is this is totally usable during a hiring loop. So if you want to send someone an assessment to use during the interview loop, it's $25. It's dirt cheap. Send it to them. They'll take it. You can look at the results and you can review them together as a part of the conversation and begin to weed out how big of an issue is their frustration, or are they aware of it and they lean into it. That would be my recommendation.
And one other, I know I'm asking you questions and now I'm going to answer it, but another question we ask a lot is, what does the work require? Because again, this is a framework for how work gets done. And so if you're looking at a role and really trying to figure out what does the work require, you want to align that with someone who's going to have a lot of energy around that. And so the other thing we talk about is just, scaring people with sincerity. If you're in conversations around that, saying like, this role is going to require creating a lot of momentum, a lot of movement, if it's galvanizing as the example. And so being super clear on that as you look at candidates or as you have those conversations internally. So Cody, anything else to add on restructuring?
You guys nailed it. The only thing I would say is, and we practice this, is like, I think it makes job descriptions a lot less relevant. We think about work in the context of working genius. So if I need invention and the janitor has invention, let's use it. Like what a gift that is to bring somebody into that conversation and say, hey, we know this about you. We want to tap into this, like who you are. And so I just think, let's not rely too heavily on the job description or what your title is. Let's just say, what does the work require? Who should we bring into this conversation? It's such a gift. I love it when people come to me and say, can I borrow your discernment? I'm like, I'll do that all day. I love that.
Totally. Okay. Another question I want to hear both your thoughts, since you both work with remote teams, is how do you use Working Genius when you're not like in the office together all the time? How do you use it with remote teams?
So practical thing, just add it to your Zoom link like this, or even if you're doing a Teams meeting, add it to your name. It helps because you're able to say, oh, I forgot that Cody was a discerner. Like, can you speak into this real quick? I think everybody should be off mute in these sorts of conversations because it's easy to check out and be on mute and not lean into your frustration. So I think the small thing of being off mute forces you to make this more of a round robin conversation, if you will. And yeah, I think almost all of my meetings are hybrid. I think there's very few meetings on my calendar that are all in person. And so maybe it's a little, cameras on. That's another big one. Do not have your cameras off. You cannot engage in the healthy conflict that you need to. You cannot see if someone's eyes are glazing over if cameras are off. You can't see if they're doing the laundry. So make it a cameras on culture, especially if you're tackling a big, hairy subject.
Perfect. Any other thoughts, Cody, on using Working Genius in the remote context?
I think it might give you an advantage. Working Genius will just give you an advantage in the sense that like inviting people to do work that they find fulfilling is just an advantage. Just saying like the only other thought I have on it is there's some work sometimes that is interesting to do in person. So it's fun to sort of go like, is that conversation worth us being in the same room, traveling to a co-location where we're going to tackle a big wonder invention session? Maybe. And is it a little easier maybe to say like, hey, we've galvanized everybody around the most important things and we've allocated tasks. Can we go do some tenacity work while we're not together? That's great too. But I just think, just inviting people to do the work that they find fulfilling. I think like what a lot of people struggle with is, are people as productive in the environment, like the virtual environment? Well, they will be if you give them the right work that they enjoy, so this might give you an advantage in that sense.
I'll say this, Julie, like the weekly tactical meetings that we run together every week, we share the screen, we have Leadr Advantage, and we see the team meeting map, and we see
I actually share a screen there and do it well. I promise I can do it.
Yeah, you do. You actually do. But having that again front and center in a hybrid environment, it matters.
Yeah, definitely. So another question was just, how do you use Working Genius in high turnover industries? Where it might be frontline workers or things like that. How have you seen Working Genius play out there?
I would say there's a number of reasons for high turnover. I will say this, there is a healthy amount of turnover in healthy companies, which is like, we're clear about our culture. And so that we try to do our best job at vetting people. The first criteria we vet people on is cultural fit. And the way we think about it, I'll just give you, I don't want to throw too many models at you, but we think of cultural fit first. Who belongs on the bus? The Jim Collins reference is like, hey, what is your culture? We got to find people that belong on this bus. Now, the second thing that you should do that really increases retention of employees is, now what seat on that bus do they belong in? And that's Working Genius. And so if you're experiencing a lot of high turnover, I would first look at how clear are we about our culture? And then if you are pretty clear, then like, are we vetting really well in the hiring process around that? If all of those are true, then I would look secondarily at, well, are we putting people in positions where they are fulfilled? Because if you're in a job that matches your Working Genius and you're walking away fulfilled every day, I think people leave jobs for burnout reasons oftentimes, or maybe managerial reasons, something like that. This will give you an advantage. If you're like, burnout really is more a symptom of the type of work people do that is outside of their genius than necessarily the amount of work. So you can give people that love that work. If I'm a discerner galvanizer, give me all the discerning and galvanizing you can. I'm going to be fulfilled and bouncing off the walls to work there.
Definitely. I'm going to throw up a QR code just as we get towards the end. So if you have questions or want to learn more about Working Genius, all of the team at Leadr is certified, so they can help you, or to learn more about Leadr Advantage. I know we've shown some of the tool today, and just the platform is so dynamic and offers so many different things that can help your teams. And so if you want to learn more or request a demo, we've got this here. But as we close out for Matt and Cody, just all the different things that we've talked about today, one of those big things is just like the culture. It's Working Genius. We talk about, it's like one of the quickest ways to really be able to have healthy teams, because you're, having conflict about the right things. You're able to increase productivity. You're able to increase morale because people know what they're good at, can show up in their genius. You can tap into one another. And so that's something where we just see, as we describe healthy teams, Working Genius can really, bring some of that to the surface in such a quick and tangible way. And then we've designed Leadr Advantage to do that and reinforce it, in the day-to-day, on your screen, in your meetings. So any other thoughts on that as we close out?
I mean, this is what gets me out of bed every morning. It also keeps me up at night every day as well. But your people matter, and your people are worth investing into. And the Leadr Advantage platform that we've created is literally $25 per person per month. Even in a high turnover scenario, that is worth the investment. It is worth the investment and saying to somebody, you matter enough for us to say, your geniuses, they matter. We need you on the team. And here's how you can bring your very best to work every single day. And to Cody's point, to feel more dignified.
Awesome.
I love that, Matt. And I don't want to be too philosophical with the close here, but like, in a world, so Pat wrote The Advantage in 2012, and he said that subtitle of that book is Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business. And we mean that, like, organizational health is a have your cake and eat it too. There's this idea in the world that like, either you have to over-index on productivity or employee experience. And the truth is that you can have both of those in a healthy organization where people love working there. They love, the work that they're doing. They love the mission, and they're more productive. And I think this is, in some ways, when it feels like we're out here proselytizing the benefits of organizational health, it's because we still are convinced that too many people are not bought into the idea that those two things can coexist. And so in a world that's moving more towards virtual environments and more towards AI and automating processes and all of that, we're still convinced more than ever that healthy businesses that are people focused are going to be the successful businesses in the future. And that can be a philosophical thing about whether you believe that work is about human dignity or not. But the truth is it can be both. It's when you dignify the people in your organizations, you create environments for them to be leveraged. It will affect your productivity and your bottom line. And so it's a have your cake and eat it too situation. Like, why would we not double down on organizational health, on working genius in a world that's zagging the opposite way? I think that people will be drawn to those organizations. You'll attract better talent. You'll have more fun doing it. And so we love working with you guys to find all the people that agree with us, that want to leverage that in their organizations. It's been a blast, and appreciate everybody jumping in on the webinar. Yeah, and I'm running late. I can't even see the clock. So Stephanie, my apologies. Julie should have cut me off earlier.
Seriously, thanks
So
everybody.
we're on the dot, but thank you guys so much for joining. And again, if you have any questions, you can visit us at leadr.com or use the QR code here.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.